Taylor Flannery of Musky Guarantee Guide Service. I could not be happier to have my good friend Taylor joining me tonight. It has been too long. We talk all the time, but not always FaceTime because we are dads and we're busy. So thank you, Taylor, for joining me. What's up tonight, dude?
Not too much. Putting the kids to bed. Doing the dad thing. Doing winter.
Relatable.
That's it.
I missed that. Did you break up there for a second?
I don't know. It looks
Oh,
good here.
okay. Sounds good, man. Well, so let's talk. I was fortunate enough to join you in the boat a couple of times this season, and actually got my biggest fish with Taylor on not this bucktail, but my friend KV's bucktail of a different color, the first one that he made for me. But overall, how'd the season go? Because I know that the next time or two that we fished was not nearly as good. I ate up a couple of high skies days for you.
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, I mean, it was a fantastic year. I think we boated 174 fish on the year.
Jesus.
Yeah. and,
That's so many.
Um, we started off out of the gate. Uh, June, June, the fish were already all pretty much on summer spots. Um, we had really warm water temps, kind of unseasonably warm, and fish were still going on gliders. They were going on top water. They're going on spinner baits, small bucktails, rubber. I mean, everything. So, started off the year hot and heavy, and then just continued that throughout the season. And it was a fantastic year. I know, and I say we caught that many fish, but honestly, I mean, for every one that we boat, there's probably two that get off, which is, I mean, just kind of the name of the game with the inexperience in the boat being, client trips and whatnot. But still get the same excitement out of them.
It's very, very relatable from the guide front. I would say that the two this fall that my boat got, or I should say the three, because my dad got one of them that we got the biggest shots at this fall, all got off. So dad's got off. I had a client lose a really nice one. And then I had one either miss or not quite get the guy's top water square. And that was a really nice fish. And that was, I mean, just the amount of water that those fish moved compared to what we had been catching. It's always different when the boat goes to the fish versus the fish coming to the boat when, the fish are fighting and you set the hook kind of thing. So, um, Brady,
Us with
what's up, dude? And Jen, Flat Brim. Flat Brim is in the chat. Thank you, Flat Brim. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. Sorry, Taylor, I did not mean to cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say us fiberglass boat guys, we don't ever pull towards the fish, no matter how big it is.
Well, I
That could
mean,
be
it's not
that
my
could be more
choice.
not going.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my choice. That's just how my boat works. Give me a break, man. Like, I don't know what you want from me. I
That
bought it a long time ago, and I'm just working with what I got.
that first spring in Iowa, man, I've never been so off my feet in a boat my entire life. God, that three
Yeah,
going
it's
stumbling around.
yeah, it's a little unstable with three grown ass dudes in there. There's no doubt about that. I've encountered that issue a couple of times guiding as well. So like, though, I mean, when I can make it happen, a new boat is gonna happen because like, especially now with little ones coming up and those kinds of things, it's not something I'm gonna mess with. So it was good when I was sturdy footed in my 20s, but as I get further on into my 30s, I think the sun is setting quick on that rig, but it works for now. A lot of good mojo in that one too. It's a great boat. I love it. It's just not gonna probably be great for me moving forward here in the near future. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
The
Um,
battleship's always ready to roll though. So like can't beat that.
yeah. Brady, the new boat was awesome this year. Absolutely loved it. Clients loved it. Plenty of room for activities in there, so that was fun. Um, Handled really well on the water, and I couldn't be happier with it. So that's
It's
that.
like it's like really spacious but not too big, which is a strange thing for a fiberglass boat. Because like sometimes like Barry's 621 is enormous. Like that thing is we call it the spaceship for a reason. It's got some really good BFE in it, big fish energy, but like that thing, it feels like a lot of boat at times. When you have three guys, it's awesome, but like you can fish three out of your boat very easily, and you can fish two out of your boat very easily. But like when you and I fish, I don't feel like lost when it's just the two of us. But like if it's just me and Barry and one of us is at the back and one of us is at the front, I feel like I got to yell at him because he's so far away.
You hear the echo across the lake.
Pretty much, yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I think your boat is like the perfect size for what you're doing and like the bodies of water you fish because it's not so big that it's going to be impossible to get on some of those puddles that you want to put it on at times. But it's also not so small that like you're going to get pushed around by the conditions, which I am very susceptible to in my boat. So yeah, and it's like super stable too, and it's high, but it's not like too high off the water. So it really provides you. It's a good combination of a lot of things, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that I will say was goofy with it, getting used to, was just how high off the water you were comparing to. I fished out of a Tuffy Esox mag for a long time. That's 5 inches off the water, and then my Ranger was a bass style boat, so I mean that was really
Mhm.
close to the water too. So I mean you could sink your 9 foot rod pretty far down on a figure eight. Where this one you gotta sometimes you gotta bend down a little bit to get some depth to it, But otherwise,
Sure.
no, you do it, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed fishing out of it this season.
Yeah, like my bow sits higher, so the bow of your boat, it felt pretty normal to me, to be honest. I'd be curious to know if yours actually sits higher, like the bow of your boat sits higher. Like the back end of my boat does not sit that high, but for whatever reason, the way my boat is designed, the bow sits really high. So yeah, I guess I didn't really notice much of a difference there.
You across the Iowa water faster.
at no wake speed, all 5 miles an hour, or
Yeah,
if you're feeling real frisky, 5.5. If you really want to try and beat someone to a spot, there's no there's no 6 mile an hour trolling here in the home state. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's places where you can go faster than no wake speed, but not around me. Um, yeah. So some of the best baits that you have, what really did the job? I know I listened to Gus talk about some on a couple of podcasts and those kinds of things. So I'm curious if yours will kind of compare to his dynamic since you fish a very similar area, or if maybe you've got kind of a different program because it's not like you're on the same lakes every single day.
yeah. Honestly, pretty much all the way through the Northwoods, it's basically the same bite. I mean, you're just kind of following it around as it's happening. And I believe Gus is, we fish kind of the same water, kind of different water, but in the end, I mean, we send pictures to each other, back to back, where you get a screenshot of a muskie in a net, and then you get another one sent your
Hmm.
way. Like, I mean, it's crazy how the windows work, but no, for like the early part of the year, obviously, well, we'll just start in Iowa. That's post spawn bite and just phenomenal on gliders. That's kind of the ticket. And then I ran a lot of the Rusty's customs. The 6 inch six sucker did phenomenal. I think there was one the first day down, we got 7 bites on that.
It's
And then
crazy.
yeah, it was nuts. And then the Conklin pedigree with the little hatchet blade on the back, that one did really um,
I
two.
got one of them. I think I grabbed Rusty's too, but I think I grabbed his 8 incher to show. No, that's not it. Oh god, they're caught on things. Sorry, Taylor. Keep going. I don't mean to interrupt you. I was trying to add on to your glider talk that we already talked about. Maybe talking about this
Yeah,
six sucker. There's the 8 incher. I don't throw it very often, but the 6 incher I throw a fair amount.
yeah, I did very well on this sucker up here too. After season
Conklin.
got yeah, that Conklin thing, that thing it does like a really tight walk to it. But you can definitely overwork that bait. I think a lot of people were having trouble with that. They were giving it, too hard of twitches or whatnot. But I mean, just really light, or just using the reel gets that bait to do what it's supposed to do. And that thing clobbered fish too. But uh, then Trusty won the stock in Phantom Soft. I absolutely crush fish on that thing. Matt's seen that in action, and
The Phantom program is for real. I don't you got some mojo with those baits that like I don't even know.
um, how do you compare those two gliders? So
I assume he's talking about Rusty's and the pedigree. So
I would
do those.
I would say that Rusty's is 100% a different than what that
Yeah. It really
found with.
stays within itself when you're working it, I've
Yeah,
noticed.
yeah, and it still has that nice kind of shimmer on the way down to hit a fish on a pause. And then Rusty's is more like a wider glide, and it really hangs nice where you can twitch, 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 and then just let that thing just coast out, and it just keeps sailing. That little blade just dangles in the back. Two completely different baits, obviously for different scenarios or whatnot, but both are phenomenal. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I'll say that the Rusties are unique in that like the at least the six sucker, not so much the fortune teller. I didn't grab one of those, but the six sucker really sits like it is very. Most of them are very neutral in the water. Obviously, they're not all going to be the same because wood is different. So, but I will say that like for example, Brian Scaife, that one that he has caught probably freaking 30 fish on at this point. It is insane how long that bait will just sit there at 12 inches under the surface and not move and not sink, not float. It's just, it's nuts. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. It might be. He kicks my ass every spring down here, so I don't know what there is to be said about that. Oh man, that's funny. I'm curious. So I got some of these Poseidon swim baits because I watch DCam Fishing's videos and I talk to him sometimes on the interwebs. I'll be really curious what you think of these this spring when we fish. So this is like his 7.5. This is the Trident, I believe, and this is the Kraken that's like 6.5. I don't know. I just did a video. I just did a video breaking down a bunch of glides like a tackle talk, and I had ice fished all day in like 25-mile-an-hour winds, and I'm just like dog tired, and my eyes are bloodshot, and I'm just like I look very not sober right now. Oh well. Doesn't matter. I don't care. Yeah, I'm putting them out there. I they're recorded, they're done. Half of them are edited. I just don't care.
Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, so glides. So are those like really the three glides that you probably lean on the most then? Just generally, or are there other ones that you kind of pull into the fold? Oh no. I forgot to grab Big Action Baits Glide. I set it aside because I was gonna ask you about that one too.
Those are pretty. I just looked those up, and I'm pretty excited. Those I
I
think he's coming with the Wausau Musky
Yeah, you
Expo.
should you should really grab one of those. I told him to send one to you. So maybe he'll take my advice. I was like, if there's a glide bait fisherman you need to send one of those things to, it's Taylor Flannery. The dude
Yeah,
throws a lot of glides and he's really good at throwing glides. So
yeah,
yeah, they're really sweet and he has some crazy patterns. But yeah, I think he'll be there with Adam. So
yeah,
yeah, people are
yeah.
gonna
I'm excited.
people's wallets are not prepared for that combo.
Oh yeah,
Rich had better pull up like another ATM or two in there for those guys. I don't know how
yeah,
much they're bringing south, but hopefully a lot for all of you. Although I hope it's not that much, to be honest with you, because I've been rocking like top line baits in the Northwoods the last 3 years with not a lot of competition. It's
right.
been pretty good.
There's dude, there's nothing that sits like this. I think it's a dipstick. My
Yeah.
goodness, that thing's just incredible. I'm pretty excited to get my hands on a couple of them after seeing what they can do. So
Get the
yeah,
XL.
fun.
There's I don't It's so crazy because like that bait has given me the the biggest shots at fish I've had in the Northwoods and my biggest fish in the Northwoods the last 2 years. And I've had it for 2 years. So it's like it's not. Yeah. I don't at this point, I don't think it's an accident. I guess we'll find out this summer. You know, what do they say? Like, once is a coincidence, twice is a whatever, and a pattern is 3 times.
I think
Once
that's
is
exactly how it goes.
once isn't yeah, like, once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times
Yeah.
is a pattern. I don't know. Ask Connor. He's on his way to the Amazon right now. He just called me. I was like, I can't talk. I gotta go live with Taylor." Hopefully he crushes some giant fish down there. I'm excited for him. Should be cool.
Is that like a peacock bass kind of affair or what?
No, I think that they'll do some of that. I think that the main target is the arapaima and then the piraku catfish. So like the biggest catfish species, the arapaima, and then I think they've got a couple of days of like whatever wants to eat in the river kind of thing.
Hmm, that'd
So
be awesome.
yeah. So yeah, he's got some barbarian braid. He's got one of the barbarian piranhas. I sent him mine because I'm hoping that Alex will get me a new one because I'm hoping that that one will get destroyed. And I think he's got one of the barbarian trolling rods just to see if he can like be the guy who's got the biggest fish or can get the biggest fish on it for the time being, which very high likelihood that that will be the case. So I'm excited. I'm excited for him. That's cool.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, being in dad mode, I feel like trips outside the United States are probably not really in the cards for the next 20-ish years. Yeah,
I
both
think you
financially and like uh, geopolitics wise. Not to get too much into that, but yeah. Well, okay, so what? I'm getting off track. So you talked glides in the spring here in Iowa. Was there anything else that tripped your trigger down here, or or are we kind of transitioning to the earlier bite in the Northwoods? Because this is cool because we can riff off each other for the Wisconsin stuff too.
no, for I mean, besides glides, down in Iowa, we had the SRJ was doing some good stuff for us. That was kind of the same the year before too, the
Hmm.
SRJ, and then kind of the program.
8-inch
Nothing.
navin usually too, and
Yep, yep. And then nothing really going on for blades yet. And I know a lot of people throw you hit that 60-degree water temp or whatever. A lot of people are throwing the small blades. I don't really touch the small blades until, later on in the season after those fish have kind of recouped a little bit from spawn. And that's I actually did really, really well. There was about a 2-week stretch, 3-week stretch for up here in northern Wisconsin where a rabbit girl, Musky Mayhem rabbit girl, it's just a little tiny, looks like a shredded little, fake Christmas tree, but
hmm.
just Colorado on it, and that thing was absolutely crushing fish. Um, yeah, I think actually Gus, I think I was on Gus's Muskies on tap, and gave that little tidbit out, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm crushing them on them now." So that tells you like the coincide,
Oh
of
yeah.
their bite, our bite. But yeah, that bait was hot for a while, and then it honestly was a great blade bite most of the season. The Hunzy tails, the 7/8 bangers, those things. I think I racked it up. There was 64 fish that between me or clients caught
Oh
on a
my
Hunzy tail.
good lord, dude, that is
It
bananas.
absolutely insane. The first I think it was 17 or 18 fish that we caught on those Hunzy tails. It was all 7/8. Um, were all out on the cast. Not one of them came to the boat. Every single one of them fish crushed that bait. And I'm like, whole
Jeez.
thing is on fire. So, I mean, it's hard to take it off at that point. So obviously you're going to catch
Totally.
fish on what you're throwing. But
Right.
those fish were fired up on that thing. And I know a lot of those were sold in the Northwoods at J&T's Tackle and Rhinelander. They have them, and he couldn't keep them stocked. I probably just because the area it is, and I'm fishing this area. I mean, they just went off the shelves like mad. But I know they caught a lot of fish for a lot of people. I got messages all the time. Hey man, thanks for posting that. That's the bite, and then they were crushing fish. That's cool to me. I really enjoy seeing that.
Totally.
Um, and then rubber's always solid, whether it's a mid or mini Medusa. The reg size bulldogs, I do really well on those. Um, the pit bulls from Team Rhino Outdoors, Musky Innovation. They came out this year. Those things were on fire.
Seen that
They
those crushed about everywhere.
Yeah, they did, and they just have such a nice like hop side to side. Which I mean, as you know, that's what we like to do with our rubber. Is get it
Yeah.
to start side to side and just erratic as possible and rip it through stuff. And I mean, that's what's going to get you bit. So um, that was fantastic. I actually did very well on a husky medusa early in the year as well.
Yeah, but there's something special about those fish that you're catching on that, so we need to touch on that too.
What's that?
Well, weren't you, like, side scanning those fish mostly? Those bigger ones that you're catching on the husky?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
Um, There was
I've
I made one video where I side scanned one, but I was throwing a mid at that time, and that one actually crushed it in the 8 on the mid, but it ripped the 3 tails off the bait. And
right.
then that is one thing that I will do if I have a fish that's just hot as hell and does not get hooks. I will throw the exact same bait, but bigger. Just upsize
Mhm.
it and rip that thing like you wouldn't believe. And usually that's your best ticket to catching that fish versus coming back on it or whatever. That's just something that I found with our fish. So
So what gear are you throwing the husky Deuce with in your some of your bigger rubber? Because again, that's not like a normal thing for the Wisco kind of Iowa guys, unless I'm totally missing the boat, which could very well be the case. But obviously, like today's angler throws huskies a bunch too, but I don't hate myself enough to throw them all day, so I usually don't. Um, but what kind of gear are you throwing yours with?
the 400 PC Fun, the 811, and that held up pretty well to it. I never had an issue drag wise or anything like that. I know the clutch in those was going out a little bit, and that's something that was being looked into by PC Fun. So I'm excited for that to be resolved.
Yeah, I'm
But
really
other
excited for the Gen 2 of that for sure.
yeah, point. But I like the high speed gear ratio for literally everything, and even your slow glides and stuff. I still like the high gear ratio because then I just use a reel handle,
Mhm.
kind of half turn like that. But I like that being able to snap your bait, no matter if it's quick, up rips or whatever. You can pick up the line really quickly and get back on a fish if you get slack lined on one. So that's important to me. I know other people are different than that, but that's how I like to do things. The only thing I really use like the low gear, like a 531 or something like that, would be like really big blades. Um,
Yeah.
that's almost a must. Otherwise, it just pounds your wrists and your hands. And um, otherwise, for clients, especially if you have somebody like a lot of people just have a really hard time slowing down with like say a little sister top water
Yes.
on the thing.
Mhm.
You give them a low ratio and they can reel that thing as fast as you want, and it's about perfect.
Yeah,
So
my clients had,
that's
like it was either way too fast or so slow they couldn't hardly get the tail to spin. So I
yeah, that's there's no in between. That's what you get. So
yeah. No, a little coaching goes a long ways, and they pick it up in no time at all. So,
yeah, yeah. Sometimes you just got to fit the gear to the client. That's part of it too. So um, yeah,
wait,
but
did you say what rod you're using for those or not? Did I just completely space?
for the husky deuces, I will not use anything except for the Chaos 2020, the Moabs. That
Okay,
thing
yeah,
is just a,
same.
like the 12-inch Suics that run the shock and aws on, or bucktails that run
Sure.
the shock. But no, if you're gonna go big rubber, it's all day.
I,
That's the one I like. I actually like Revo handle on it as well. It's just something to
okay.
grip versus just the rubber. So that's very convenient.
Yeah, I like the Moab too. It's really nice for that bigger stuff. Like that stuff that's just like a little bit too big for the shock and awe, like some of the bigger ridgeways, it just helps to absorb some of that. I don't know. I feel like I'm able to have the rod do more work than me with some of it. Um, and same with some of that bigger rubber too. I'm trying to think of some of the stuff like Brady's bowfin, the regular bowfins I throw on that, the regular ridgeways. Um, pretty much anything like Mag Dog and bigger, regular deuces, huskies, that kind of stuff. Adam, you just missed it, dude. I We were just talking about your baits like not that long ago. You tuned in just a hair's bit late. Mod with the yeah. See, I need to try some of those Revo handles. I just haven't pulled the trigger on them yet. Because usually what I do is I'm like switching my hand grip throughout the day to reduce fatigue, so it really doesn't bother me that much. I don't know. I guess that kind of works for me, and maybe I'm weird because I'm constantly changing like where I'm holding the rod or the reel or palming the reel versus the rod. I don't know. So, Taylor, what moving into the fall then, what did the bite kind of what did the bite kind of do there?
Um, honestly, we had a stupid fall. It was not good.
Really? Our stupid like bad or tough? Because ours was tougher than it probably should have been.
Well, it was so we still caught fish, but it was
Nice.
definitely not your typical fall.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, we had like I'll just start like early fall, whatever. I mean, everything was going. That's early fall. We have a great like mid lake shallow rock bite. That's something that I get on a lot. I actually prefer fishing rocks over weeds that time of year. But uh, the same thing. Rubber, bucktails, topwater, dive and rise. That I mean, literally everything is working at that point. But then as we got into September, we had a cold front come in, which is probably one of the top times to fish is that first cold front in September,
Sure.
and we were moving a lot of fish. I think it was actually right before Brian Scaife came up. We had 3 days in a row that I had clients dump. I mean, probably 47 to 48 inch fish.
Oof.
Very, very rough go. But one dude, he worked his ass off with a Medusa all day, and he was sweating and whatever. And he was just about done, throwing it. He had raised a couple on it, and I'm like, just keep throwing it, man. Well, he got rocked and about knocked him out of the boat, and
Oh
he
no.
set the hook, and I mean, probably a 48 came just flying out of.
Oh no.
That fish is right there. Well, you could see an orange tail from a Medusa hanging out of its mouth. And I'm like, get back into it. You still got her, And he
Hmm.
reels up and he had slack line or whatnot. So he reeled into her. She starts head shaking again and she threw the hooks out then. But um just a beast. I mean, that's big fish. That's just what they do. But that was kind of upsetting. And I mean, it was like 10 minutes later after that he caught a I'm like, well, at least you got one, but that one sure would
Yeah.
have been nice to picture of. But um, no, that was a nice little stretch there. It was like a week where those fish were really pushing shallow. I mean, that fish came out of about 4 feet of water, um, and everything was setting up perfect. And then it got hot. I mean, it got like 80 some degrees, and
Yes.
wind and just terrible. And a lot of those fish that were pushing up shallow sucked back out onto that like 17-foot mud, out just hanging
Hmm.
out. And we were still catching those fish, but it was where you were working the weed line or whatever, and you'd see one on side imaging, and oh yeah, hey, we should probably back off. So then you'd go a cast length out or whatever, and then you'd end up sticking one deep. But kind of a weird time there where you had it was almost like that, like June bite where you got some fish are still way shallow, some are out deep doing
Hmm.
the open water thing. So that was hard to get on fish. But um, as the fall went on too, then our turnover kind of lasted a long time. It was like that 50 to 53 degrees for quite a while. But those fish were all like super shallow. I mean, like 2 feet to 4 feet of water, and that's I think what 12-inch suet was really doing a fantastic job getting some big fish, but they were all way up tight. So that was kind of hard fishing. Um, but you're fishing the normal stuff where you're thinking that those fish are going to be right on the edge or sucked into the green a little bit, but yeah, they
Mhm.
were right. I mean, just stupid happening, and that went all the way through until just about like the mid 20th of October is when that was going on. So it's kind of funky.
Yeah, no, I am totally with you there. Adam, have a good show this weekend. I already told Bucko you're gonna be or he's gonna be my mule, so don't hesitate to get him anything that you want to get me. But I hope that you guys have an awesome time out there. You, Bucko, all the boys, Regan, should be a lot of fun. All the all the musky hunks as well. God. That'll be a party. But as I will echo you on the fall, Taylor, because the warm up like early October was just it was bad. Because I went from in September, most of my trips and me fishing, we were getting like 1 to 5 shots a trip. Like we never got more than five, but each trip we had more than one, I should say. And then Connor, because I just didn't happen to book anything that first weekend of October, Connor came this way and he fished with his buddy over here by me for all day on Saturday. Didn't see a fish. And then I fished with him all day Sunday, didn't see a fish. And it's just like, what even explains that? That just like, they just vanished. They were gone. And yeah, muskies being muskies, I guess. Glad I didn't have a guide trip that weekend. I would have looked really dumb.
Yeah, that happens. That
It
happens to the
does.
best of us.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's happened before. It'll happen again. Eggs get laid. Eggs happen. It's just part of the deal, unfortunately, with these fish. Um, yeah, I'll relate to you on the client too, because that was pretty much the exact same thing that happened to my dad. Well, I shouldn't say like the fish shook him off, but basically, big wall of water, eats swim bait. He sets the hook hard. He's like, I thought it was a tree, so I didn't set it as hard. I was like, I like watched the footage back. And I was like, hey, he set the hook pretty good. It's just like
Yeah.
gone, and it's like, oh man. I mean, that was a really, really nice fish on a tough day of fishing, and it would have been, I don't know. That one was probably somewhere between 44 and 46. It was a really, really nice fish. But what do you do? I was gonna ask you, did you have kind of the same deal in Wisconsin where like the cool water temps lingered for like a really long time? Because I remember over the 4th of July, we had water temps in kind of the low 70s, and I wouldn't be able to tell you in all my time in Hayward the last time that had happened. Which I mean is not like a ton of I don't have a ton of data to build that off of, but it just was like cool for so long. It seemed to keep the fish more spread out, and then therefore fishing was just generally tougher for me. But I also might just suck at musky fishing, so there's always that.
Well, we had an awful lot of rain
Right.
because I mean our year started off. I mean, no precipitation whatsoever. I mean, no snow on the ground, no runoff. But Mother Nature always balances
Sure.
herself out, and just the amount of rain we got was just crazy. It honestly, like normally a musky fisherman gets all jazzed up when you got storms. It just seemed like the fish were so used to those fronts coming through that it didn't matter anymore. It
Yeah,
was like, I mean, like, some of the bluebird days were the best days on the water, and it was almost
I would agree with that.
heating up the water temps just a little bit, and made a move or up their metabolism, whatever it may be, and they
Mhm,
had to feed. Yeah, it was very very a strange year. Um, but yeah, like you said, the water temps were they stayed around that like 70 to like
mhm,
72, 73 for the time. With warm days, then it would rain, and then it would warm days it rained. It would all kind of balance out. But um, honestly, during that stretch, July and August was on fire. I mean, we had a really really good time during that, but um, it was more so the fall that was kind of a struggle where it just was not really what a fall should be. So
I'm trying to think of how much fishing I actually got done at that point in time. Because like early July I was there and then we left for a few weeks and then came back in August for a little while. And so I had like my best day this past season was in July, and that was I went out in the middle of the afternoon with Callie's cousin, and we got what did we get? I think we went 3 for 4 that afternoon, and we fished for, like, 2.5, 3 hours. Like, we were not out there for very long because it was, like, during Willow's nap time, so I was like, "Let's just go for a little bit." And, he got his PB, which was cool, and I got 2 on the bowfin, lost 1 on the bowfin, and, um, yeah, and then August, same kinda deal, just a random morning. I got, like, 3 shots out of nowhere, lost 1, caught the biggest one that I had a shot at in the Northwoods this season, and it's just, like, doesn't make any sense, but whatever. I guess I
Yeah.
had one other really good day in or, I think it was later June. That was, like, KV's buddy hopped in my boat, and he got a 41 and I got a 38 or 37, I think, on the bowfin that day. So really cool day. But then like KV and his I think it was his nephew fished all day too on the same body of water and they didn't catch a fish. They saw several but didn't catch any. So I don't know what that means other than
Hmm.
muskies are weird. So
I think actually that day that you said that you were crushing, where you had that 3 in August, we had an absolute fire day that day too. It was morning, and it was right as storms were rolling in, like around like 11 o'clock or something in the morning.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, I got stormed off that morning. Yeah.
yeah, that was a fire day. I think we caught a 44, 42, 41, and like a 34, and then
Jeez.
dumped 2 other ones or something that morning. Just freaking awesome. It was one of them days where me sitting in the back of the boat, I'm like, there's going to be a muskie right here, cast
Hmm.
right there, and crush it. And it's like, yeah, you just feel so good about yourself.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Days you
it
live for.
it, but yeah, those are the days you live for.
Yeah, I don't the probably the frustrating thing for me, on some of those days is I didn't know what was causing those fish to just fire because I know, like, with Callie's cousin, for example, and then the couple days after I had that good day on the Dipstick XL, it's like I went out and ran the exact same program for the next couple mornings or afternoons or whatever it was, like, the same window, and, like, nothing happened, and it's just like, I don't know if it's like a hot and cold deal, and that was my body of water for last summer or what. But I will say it is interesting with like windows in terms of different geographic locations because um, this was like 3 years ago in the Northwoods. I got a 45 one morning. It's still my third biggest Wisconsin fish. Clear out in open water is awesome. Is on the Mayhem Grenade, and I texted it to one of my buddies back home, and he's like, "Oh, that's awesome, dude. I got my PB this morning too." And then he sends me this picture of this fat Iowa, like 48.5 inch fish. And I'm just like, holy crap. But it's just like, what makes all of these fish, big ones, like chew at the same time? Like, I mean, his fish that he caught was literally minutes off of the one that I caught. Like, is that just sheer coincidence, happenstance? I don't know, but like, it seems too. It seems too improbable to be coincidental. You know what I mean? Like two of the apex queen fish in those systems just firing at basically the exact same time in totally different places. I don't know. It's just kind of crazy to think about.
Not a coincidence.
Yeah,
It's
I know that it's not, but it's like, what makes them do that?
Yeah, it's unreal. That's honestly, if you have, a bunch of people on the same body of water, if you put one in the net, it's so funny because you can look across the lake, and odds are you're going to
Mhm.
see something else with the net out. It's just it's unreal how it happens so many times.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, Barry and I this spring, we got cut off by a guy, and Jaron was with us, and we got 1 bite that day, and I got it on a mini Doosa, and it just, like, came up and cranked it. It was awesome, such a cool eat right in front of me, and I was like, "Ah, that one felt good," because those guys just, like, had to be in front of us, and then of course they like hook up with two and they like lose the bigger one and catch like a 30 incher, and I'm just like, but it's but like to your point, like when they go, they just go, and there's no rhyme or reason. Bucko, we just talked about you a second ago. Have fun at New York, man. I appreciate you. Yeah. Anyway, Taylor, are you frozen or are you just vibing over there?
I'm chilling.
So like we should probably actually talk about what we talked about talking about for this live, because we talked about you kind of breaking down a little bit of the electronic side of things that maybe at times will give you an edge when other people maybe aren't uh, taking a look at those. I know that you had that critique of me, and I was just like, well, my side pitching doesn't work anymore. Just like I feel like a redneck. I mean, I fit right in here in Iowa, I guess. But yeah, it's just like half my shit on my boat is broken, and like I just go out and fish.
Works. Works. Yeah. No, so I mean everybody's probably thinking, but it is not forward facing sonar. I don't play that
No,
game.
we're.
Um
I mean, we can talk about it. I don't care. Everyone treats it like it's a taboo subject. There's really not that much to talk about. Like, we're not gonna get
no.
struck down by the Lord Almighty if we talk about forward-facing sonar. I mean,
All I have to say about forward facing sonar is that if you use it responsibly, treat the fish how they should be treated. That's all I have to say.
that's all
I
that needs to be said.
yeah, I prefer not to have it on my boat. I tried it when the Humminbird Live first came out, and I just didn't like that kind of fishing, so I sold it. I People enjoy it. To each their own. Who am I to tell you you can't do what you want? But anyway, so the probably the biggest thing for me that I feel like I have an advantage is I have gone through and most every single lake that I fish, which is a lot, I've gone through and I've done the auto charting. That's something with I don't know what Garmin or Lowrance is, whatever it is, but Humminbirds, I have the Helix units, and I go through, I auto chart every single lake. Usually it's 100-acre lake would be an hour. So figure, if you got 1,000 acres, you're spending 10 hours on the water, if that makes any sense. Just driving around, making a map, marking out cribs, marking out weed lines, marking out rock bars. Um, oh yeah,
Yeah. I appreciate Wayne, because Wayne is like, so Cowboy Jack is Wayne. He's a guy who's been in my boat several times. I appreciate him greatly. Good fisherman, great to have in the boat, and he's very like OCD with his electronics, and he knows more about his electronics than I do. And he'll like climb in my boat, and my electronics will fizzle out or do something stupid, of course, every time that he gets in there. And then we'll go out and we'll try and find fish that don't want to bite. But yeah, I mean, we had a good trip this fall, so that was cool. He got one. We kind of just pull the last second Hail Mary, and sometimes Musky God smile. Karen says, but I have to tell you my opinion. I mean, I can tell you my opinion. I think it's like I don't think live scope is really that helpful at times. I mean, at least for the fish that I fish. Now, if you live in Minnesota and you're targeting open water fish that are chowing on Cisco's in clear water that are going to stick out like sore thumbs that are 50 some inches, and you can drive around and look for them. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can do it very easily. Like, should you do it? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. I don't think. I mean, people poach deer here in Iowa all the time and throw their carcasses by the boat ramps that I fish. Like, just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should. Just anyway, I don't know. I'll digress. Sorry, Taylor.
yeah.
I'll let you.
Well, yeah, it's a who cares? I mean,
Yeah,
fish just take care of the resource. But
agree
no,
100%.
yeah, and with the auto charting and stuff, um, the biggest benefit to that is being able to see all of the little tiny, idiosyncrasies of what's going on. Where a lot of people are like, "Oh, I fished a weed bed today." Yeah, well, what part of that weed bed did you fish? Did you fish the straight stretch? Did you fish the inside turns? The little points coming out that you cannot really tell when you're fishing along the edge of it. you're using your side imaging and you're like, oh, I went a little too far on or whatever, but that might be that little point. Um, yeah,
Karen's a Minnesotan, so like take
I
that
know.
into account. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Great quilts, by the way,
Yeah,
but
freaking sweet.
friggin' sweet. But no, I mean, once you do the auto charting, you do the homework, you can basically, without even fishing a body of water, you can tell by, say, you have a west wind, you have it, blowing into this weed line, you can tell that fish is going to be here, 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 on a little point in the weeds or on a little inside turn or right around the weed edge because of that, current of the waves and, blowing through. It's going to make those little setup stage spots for those fish to feed. It's going to ball the bait fish up in those areas, and you can put more casts into that area and slow your boat down, and you're going to catch more fish. It's just, I mean, science, right? But
Mhm.
when you know around that, work a different side of it, you can do whatever you have to do to get bit. I think that so many people just fly down the whole weed line or rock bar or whatever, thinking that it's all the same, and it never is. So, like, on lakes that I've fished, for years and years, I have waypoints built up in certain little spots. And when you look at the auto chart, there's always a little, a point or a little inside turn or a little something that you're casting on that those fish are coming off of all the time. I mean, it's not a coincidence, but once you, see that on, certain bodies of water and you build up the kind of, over time deal, you can pick it out on a new lake that you've never fished before and say that's where they're going to be. So that's extremely helpful when you're trying to break down new water and stuff. But um, for most people, I think it's hard to take a free day. They got they only have Saturday and Sunday to go out and do
Mhm.
their thing. It's hard for them to take a Saturday and go and drive around the weed line and just mark stuff without fishing rods. To me, it's really beneficial to go out and have those things, so that when you fish in the future, it's already set up, and I mean it's saved forever. So, and you could say that I have a lot of time now that this is what I'm doing for a living, but I did all that stuff before I even started guiding. It's just something that
Sure.
I felt I needed to do to catch fish every time I went. That's it's part of it, but
It's interesting that you say that in terms of how well it works, because so on the chain that our cabin is on, we've got several lakes that we can utilize, and the map is not perfect on any of them, but it's very, very close on a couple of them, except for one, which is not even close and even a little bit. And like since I haven't auto charted it, I basically have marked everything with waypoints. So like I have the structure marked, I have like points marked with waypoints, but it is, like, so far from exact, and I end up blowing over it if I fish it, you know, almost every time, or, like, get too close with it or push too far off or whatever it is. Because I mean, you know how Wisconsin water is, there's steep breaks, and it does not take you're talking about, like, 10, 15 feet that your boat needs to be in the zone, and if you're 15 feet one way or 15 feet the other, you're either on too close or too far off, and that's not ideal. So, yeah.
yeah. Um, Karen asked, "How did you tackle a big weed bed?"
It's a great question. It's almost like I asked you this question, this summer when we fished together, Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, I take it in little pieces. If say you have a weed bed that is 500 yards long, okay, I would not fish that entire weed bed. I would drive through. I would check it out. I would mark out the little patches. I would mark out the little points, the little inside turns in that weed bed, and I would focus most of my casts in those smaller areas of that big weed bed. That's where the auto chart, like I was talking about, comes in handy. You could fish. I mean, if you have one tiny little point and the wind's blowing right into it, I guarantee you there are probably 3 to 5 muskies hanging out in that general vicinity. So you just keep on pounding that little, say, 100-yard stretch of that 500-yard weed bed instead of fishing the entirety of it and just wasting your moon window. That's how I would attack that, as small spots. And if you don't know the water at all, I would move through, even if you pounded on that water where you think that fish is, I would move through quickly, and just spot cast until I got to the next place where I thought that I had more efficient casting, and then I would slow way down and I would hit that, just pound on it, and then what I like to do is if you do have an inside turn or a nice point in that long weed bed, I would fish the outside of it first, obviously looking at your side imaging and whatnot, seeing where those fish are set up, and then actually turn it right around and go from inside out and hit that weed bed from a completely different casting angle. And I mean, you're going to come across a fish that's at least going to show itself if you're doing that.
So I'm gonna piggyback a little bit off of Taylor on this one because I asked him that same question based on a weed bed that I have on my system, um, which is like pretty vast, but I've caught some fish on it, and I've actually caught one really nice one there. But like I haven't really seen much or caught much on that since that fish, and I fish it every year. Um, and I guess basically what it comes down to for me is usually it's how many people do I have in my boat is question number one if I'm going to hit it at this point in time. And then question number two is how long do I have to fish? So, like, if I have a long time, or if I have multiple people in my boat and I can have multiple presentations covering that weed bed, I'm probably more likely to hit it because I know I can hit it more efficiently without sucking a ton of time out of my day to do it. If I'm by myself, to be completely honest, unless like I'm really feeling the vibes or if it's like kind of on my way or on kind of in the lake in the system that I'm hitting, then I'll consider hitting it. But even then, it's a question of time because most of the time my windows are pretty short on the water and it doesn't really make sense for me to go hammer on this big weed point when I could just go or weed bed when I could kind of hit spot on the spots or points and know that those fish are going to be there versus like spending a ton of time trying to nitpick a really big spot and it's like well I can hit all these other spots where I know that there'll be fish and they may go they may not go but it just kind of is what it is. I hope that that makes sense and that's kind of my thought process with it too, not to steal too much of your thunder there, Taylor.
Yeah, and kind of to touch on what you said, there's I call it like a modified run and gun. If you have, say,
Yeah.
on have a 2 hour moon window, okay, I'm not gonna hit the biggest weed bed in the lake. I'm gonna hit small spots that I know the wind has been blowing into previous days, that day, whatever it may be, where those fish are going to be set up, and it's only going to take you 20 minutes to fish the entirety of that spot. Usually you bang that spot, move, bang that spot, move, bang that spot, versus wasting your entire 2 hour window fishing in between, these little efficient areas in that big weed bed. So that's kind of what you're saying there, but that's definitely something that I do all the time.
Um, Karen, I guess this is going to be where probably Taylor and I will differ in our presentations from what you guys usually do in Minnesota. And I'm going to guess Taylor and I probably do the exact same thing when it comes to weeds in Wisconsin slash Iowa, and that is rip the crap out of them with rubber usually. Um, Obviously, if you have more than one presentation, that's great. But if I'm by myself in northern Wisconsin and I'm not outside of like perfect what I would consider like the most perfect bucktail conditions and outside of like what I would consider, something that I think is perfect for the situation, I'm probably throwing rubber 90% of the time because it gets bit when nothing else does. And yeah, I don't know. You can feel free to confirm or deny with that one, Taylor, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
That's I love the rubber too. But if there's one thing that I can say is proven over and over and over again, 9 inch unweighted suic over those weeds. If you have, like, northern
Sure.
Wisconsin have a lot of 8 to 6 foot is the edge of the weeds, and those 9 inch unweighteds. I mean, they only go down a foot and a half, 2 feet tops. They're a little bit quicker versus the weighted, so you're snapping them a little bit faster, but those are deadly in weeds. I know this year wasn't like fantastic for me for Suics. But that is usually a really, really hot bite. Normally, like that, mid July and August time is when I'll throw a lot of the unweighted 9 inchers, and there's nothing that compares to a Suic hit. I mean, they just flat out crush that thing, and it's awesome. But definitely, that's what I would suggest doing over the weeds.
And I'll echo Taylor. Yeah, the dive and rise program is always a good program. I'll echo Taylor on the efficiency thing too around Moon. And like I said before, I don't get, with Willow and the fam at the cabin and all the things, I don't get as much time on the water as I used to. So I have to be like super efficient with my time. And it is a lot more likely now that I will hit more spot on the spots to try and figure out what's going on than I would otherwise. I just don't have time to work those long weed beds or flats or longer points. And sometimes I will do that just to kind of see what the lake is kind of giving me as far as feedback. But about the only time that I will work those longer spots, uh, and that will completely change my game plan for a given day, will be if I have live bait. So if I have live bait, I will be far more likely, just for the longevity and life of that bait, like the less you mess with that pike that's floating back there, the more likely you're gonna get more life out of it and more runtime out of it. And I just feel like it's an X factor, especially when I'm fishing by myself, that like cannot be matched. So I try and put myself in the most efficient locations with the highest concentration of fish that I can get the most bang for my buck out of my pike, and still be on fish, casting to fish the whole time. Whether it's like basin areas, longer weed lines, longer weed points, stuff that takes a little bit longer to work. And I don't know. I know Taylor doesn't run the pike program probably as much as I do, but you can feel free to tell me if that doesn't make sense to you. Suic with the hard rip, yeah, yep, been there, done that. It's a good feeling.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, no, did you cover the stuff that you wanted to on electronics there, Taylor? I didn't mean to steal any of your thunder with some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think I got the important part out. That just to take the time to do the auto charting and learn the lake. I mean, you can go to a brand new lake these days with the combination of GPS mapping and side imaging and auto chart and all this. And a lake that you've never touched before, you can go around in 600-acre lake in 6 hours, and you know it better than the guy that's fished it for 40 years. You obviously don't have the fish history on that lake, but you have
Sure.
everything that you need
Which,
to tell you where to be.
which you make a good point there inadvertently with like fish history, like quote unquote, because like there are spots and places that these fish use that, I mean, obviously it makes sense to the fish, but there are things where it's like, why in the heck are these things here year in and year out? And you may not ever discover like the nuance of that. Or maybe I'm just a bad fisherman or bad at finding the clues to discover the nuance. But like if they use it one year, the likelihood that they continue to use it is high. I mean, that said, like don't fish history just because, but at the same time, um, use history as a resource.
Yeah,
I hope that that makes sense.
it's always a great starting point, right? I mean, anything, okay, well, last year I caught a, fish on this rock bar at 74-degree water temps, and, this was the conditions. Obviously, that's a good starting point for you if you're only going out, on the weekends or whatever it is. But I know we had a trip in July, it was like the 12th of July or something. I mean, usually those fish are on the edge of the weeds. They're doing their thing. You're catching fish on rocks, weeds, but they're out a little bit, on that break. And it was a flat, calm, sunny day on, a 3,000-acre lake. And we just had nothing going for 3 hours of that trip. And I seen bait fish just popping like you wouldn't believe in 5 foot, just choked out grass. Um, just terrible, terrible stuff to fish through. I'm like, honestly, there's nothing going on, where these fish should be. Let's head in there, see what we get. Well, we went through the first pass. I think we raised three and lost one, and we almost doubled up. Had a
That's
had one
crazy.
had one hit an SRJ right next to the boat. We lost both, but um, it's like, okay, well, that's what's going on. I mean, there was like 4 or 5 fish in that first pass, so every single spot in that lake that I knew that had 5 foot nasty thick grass. We went and hit it, and I think we had like 3 or 4 fish hooked. I think we had another like 12 up or something. I mean, just and it was stupid. It was those fish were not where they should be. If you're just fishing memories, you'd have a terrible day on the water. So it's
Sure.
reading the water, reading the bait, seeing what's going on. It's all part of it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just experience, and that's why you more or less hire a guide. Bob says he prefers the bobbies. Bobbies are underrated. I agree with you, Bob, 1,000%. One of my mentors, Jay, who is well, he was the president of one of the chapters in the Twin Cities. He may still be, but I fished with him a few times, and his favorite lure is a 12-inch bobby bait. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but um, I definitely picked that up from him and have caught fish on 12-inch bobby baits because of him. So, Jay, you're the man. And I believe Callie's biggest fish in the Northwoods is on a 6-inch bobby. I'm pretty sure. Um, I can't think of one that I know of that she's gotten with me that's bigger, and I don't think that she'd gotten one previously to that that was bigger. So 6-inch bobbies, man, they have some mojo to them. What did Bucko say here? What about current on a lake? Oh, that's a good question for you, Taylor. I mean, my lakes are reservoirs and do have current at times, but like it's tough to plan for that. But like usually on my lakes, if there is current, the fish that hold in current spots are there year in and year out because the current is there always, if that makes sense. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've had kind of the
Um,
same deal.
I would say yes, you're fishing current, and it's kind of the same thing that I referred to with the auto chart stuff and the wind direction. And if you have 3 days prior, where the wind is blowing across the lake, yeah, even if it's not visual, it's still there. Say you have an island with a big point coming off, and the wind's whipping into it. There's going to be a big wrap
Right.
around that, creating an underwater eddy. I use that all the time on main lake structure, and that's how I kind of determine where those fish are going to be set up on that main lake structure is by the wind direction, also current going, around that point or into a little inside turn before the point or whatever it may be. I spend a lot more time on those spots because that's what's going on there is the currents coming around that whip, and that's where they're set up to feed at. So yeah, definitely a thing. That's you always want to pay attention to wind direction, not only the day that you are fishing but also the days prior, leading up to your trip throughout the week, because that's going to determine where those fish are set up. I mean, that's not saying that the fish won't be in a slack water somewhere just hanging out, because I mean they're stupid and they do stupid stuff, but your fish that are tuned up and that are revved up and they're there for a reason to feed, that's where they're going to be, is on those little current spots. So yeah,
I,
definitely a thing.
that's something that I know and that I need to pay more attention to and like utilize that more often, like the wind stuff and paying attention to the wind leading
Yeah,
up to when I go fishing versus just like, yep, let's go out there. This spot looks good. Or, like, I don't know. It's not quite that simple, but like, but I need to pay more attention to those like very minute factors. But also sometimes
right,
too here in Iowa, like this, Taylor, where sometimes the wind limits where you can actually physically fish on a given day or where you can fish in a given day. And sometimes you're just hosed and there's just really no way around it.
right.
Um,
Yeah, that's. I mean, in northern Wisconsin, you don't have this luxury, but in northern Wisconsin, you can literally pick the lake that you're going to fish by the wind direction. You know what
sure,
I mean?
yeah.
Because you know where spots are at that you're going to be able to fish. You're going to be able to tuck away, but there's also going to be current in those areas. So that plays a huge role in. I mean, literally every day picking which body of water we're going to hit, or not even if you don't start on that body of water. After you see what the conditions are doing, to jump over and move to a new body of water, that's
Hmm.
ball throw away. But I don't like here's a really good example with you and I and Gus is when you caught your
Hmm.
fourth. Um, that was a spot that literally said, "Hey, we're going to take 3 more casts and we're going to be out of the zone." Well, that's that spot where that wind is blowing into that all day
Right.
long, and that is where those fish set up on that little inside turn with it's a weed to weed transition where you have a little bit of grass mixed with cabbage and that wind blowing in there. There is going to be an active fish there at some point. And that was
The crotch of the spot.
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's like it's funny though, like the way that conditions can dictate where you can fish and then your level of success based on that. So like the year that Callie and I got married, like everyone was in the Northwoods, we were having a good time, but it was the day before the wedding when we had just time to do whatever, golf, fish, whatever. So like my best man and my dad came out fishing with me and it was blowing like consistently like 25 to 30 miles all day long. And that is not common for the Northwoods, as you can attest. But it basically kept me off all of my like S tier, A tier spots, and I was like stuck to C and B spots all day long. And we moved a couple of fish, but nothing like substantial. But then the following day, when I was able to get out with my brother-in-law and my best man, we went like I don't know if it was two for three or two for four in a significantly shorter amount of time. And yeah, it's funny how that stuff works because it's like, oh, I could finally hit the spots that I wanted to hit the previous day, and of course stuff was firing then. So yeah, I don't know.
Right.
The
Yeah.
non-obvious current areas. Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's
Probably
kind of fun how
probably
muskies work.
something I should pay more attention to as well, and I don't. Like just, these little details matter and they add up. I think that's like a good lesson in and of itself to a day of success is just like every little detail matters and every little detail that you can like stack in your favor is just going to lead to success. And it's annoying that I'm recognizing all this stuff that I just should be paying more attention to. uh, I
And
think
some
I base. Sorry, go
do
ahead, Dave.
whatever they want, and it doesn't matter. You could be in a terrible spot, throwing the worst bait in the world, and you're gonna catch a fish. That's musky fish.
Yeah, there are a wealth of individuals who have caught fish bigger than me that quote unquote may or may not deserve to have caught those. There are many individuals who caught fish that they shouldn't have. There's been fish in my boat that have been caught that shouldn't have been caught. Sometimes you do everything right and you get the fish. Sometimes you do everything wrong and still get the fish. And sometimes you do everything right and it doesn't work out. So what do you
Yeah.
do? That's just
Um,
musky fishing.
with the wind, it's you're not targeting the slack water. You're targeting the wind blown sections of it, but the I guess the little interns and whatnot in
You,
that
you're targeting
structure.
the eddy that
Yeah,
the
the
wind
little
is
eddy
making.
area. Yep, or like just around, like if you have a point of an island or something, usually the point itself that's on the windblown side, that's going to hold a fish. And then just like a little bit past the tip of it on the back side of it will hold fish as well, because that's actually, I'm talking with my hands, but that's actually wrapping the current around that underwater island or point or whatever it may
Hmm.
be, and those fish are going to set up on the backside. And it's not necessarily slack water, but it's an underwater eddy is what you're basically fishing.
Yep, exactly. There's something else I was going to add to that, but I don't. Oh, I was going to say that I think a lot of my stuff that I lean on is time of year based, which isn't always great. I mean, it's like, how do I want to say it? Like it's a good reference point to have an idea of where those fish are going to be located for the time of year because it seems like in Wisconsin and in Iowa, I can kind of count on those fish being in pretty general areas given the time of the year. Or if I like see a fish in a given area, then it's like, okay, then they're at this point in the year, which isn't always the case and sometimes gets me into trouble. But at the same time, it's not like all the fish move at once and then all of the fish move back at the same time. And like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess like time of the year is like my big jumping off point, and then I make adjustments based on that with conditions, and then what I see like water temp and cover and like forage or where I think that the forage will be.
Right. That's you can always get a simple base is just flat out saying there will always be fish in open water, no matter what time of year. And then that end of June or mid June, whatever it may be, you're looking at any kind of the first structure on the outside of any spawning bay, and then June, end of June to July, August, you're looking at the edge of the weeds, open water, that sort of thing. Your main lake stuff is always fire. And then that just kind of continues when you hit that summer peak or whatever, where everything is just stable, and that's usually your best fishing of the year as far as numbers of fish, length of the windows. I mean, that's go time. I absolutely love like the August, July August time, but um, September, you get that cold front. Those fish are going to push shallow. It's just, I mean, you got that kind of time of year
Mhm.
where this is should be happening, but once again, it is all weather dependent and water temps and everything that's happening at once. But it's definitely a good starting point.
Musky Face asks about Chippewa flowage muskies. My biggest Wisconsin muskie is actually out of the Chippewa flowage. Props to Alex. That was not my deal. So yeah, that was cool fish. 46 and a half. If you had unlimited funds, where would you buy your dream musky cabin? Oof, that's a good question, Karen. If we're not talking about the legal issues that might go into Americans buying property in Canada, probably somewhere there. But then it becomes how frequently could I visit it?
Yeah,
Which, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Frequency versus, yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question.
I would second the Canada. And honestly, I don't give a rat's ass about a 50-inch fish or a 55-inch fish. I want the peace and quiet and no boats around and enjoying my life. That's about it. Yeah, Lake of the Woods, Eagle Lake,
Yeah,
somewhere.
one of those. Canyon. I remember Glenn was kind enough to take me out on Canyon, and that was awesome. We saw like 3 boats that entire day, and like I know that I'm not catching a Canadian legal out of that lake or whatever, but just like you have all of this lake and no one is there is just nutty to me. Um, yeah, yeah, somewhere up there. Yeah,
Yeah, we have a couple of little tucked away honey holes in northern Wisconsin yet that you can get out there and you're the only boat, and there's not too many cabins or anything, but a couple of them have big stretches of river in between lakes that are all connected, and those are awesome. I absolutely love those kind of lakes, but it's just
Black Sewell would also be cool. Buckeye.
uh yeah, that, that's a great time line with everybody.
It's funny because in the summer is like the only time I look forward to Mondays because that's when all of the weekenders from the Twin Cities in Hayward go home, and the only people that are on our lake are the retired old farts or your casual family pontoon or whatever. Like if I go out in the mornings by myself, I might see 2 or 3 other boats, um, if even that. So that's always cool. Honestly, probably the most like during the weekdays, the most musky fishermen I usually see are there's like 2 or 3 house owners out there that will musky fish, and then but they don't fish every day, and then guides. Like every now and then I'll see like Eric Tui or Steve Jensen or um, Chuck. I can't think of Chuck's last name, but yeah, sometimes they'll come out there. I even saw Pete Mana one time last year, but he wasn't musky fishing. Him and Tex were, I think, walleye fishing. I was
See
like,
his
gee dang. What's that?
Could you identify him by his cool pink hat?
No, it was the recon that gave it away with the giant AMSOIL sticker.
Yeah. That'll
So Yeah. What's up, Parker? How's it going, dude? Yeah, no, um, yeah, Wisconsin's pretty legit. I mean, even those days, like we fished on some of your bodies where there really aren't that many people fishing out there. Like, you know what it's like down here with all the bass guys and all the yahoos that are ready to rip out in the spring. So, um, Parker, I don't know, man. You've asked me this question like 20 times. The what works for me may not work for you. If you ended up getting that clam from Andrew, I think that that will be an awesome net and it will work well. Taylor, you use a clam, don't you?
Yeah, I have a clam. I like
Sell
it.
Parker on
I
the
think
clam.
yeah, it does the job. That's I actually I really really like the net buddy net. Have you seen that? That's something that
Thatcher had one
looks
that
like
we
a
used.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, mine's my perfect net is a roundabout solution for a lot of people. Um, I think it works great because it's light enough for me to use on my own, and but like you got to upgrade that bag. That is very critical. Um, get the musky buddy net. Well, James, the reason he is asking about that is he does a lot of kayak fishing, so he's been significantly more selective due to that. Which I would say that with all of the bonuses that the Net Buddy net has, the handle is very long, which would be very suboptimal for a kayak type situation. Boating situations, you bet. Kayak, I would say hopefully Matt figures out how to if he wants to get into that market to um, have a shorter handle. Too shallow. Oh crap! I don't know what Karen is talking about. Is she talking about nets? I'm not sure. But yeah, Parker, I don't know. I hope that my advice has been helpful. Although it is probably far from perfect on the net thing. I think musky nets are a lot like musky reels in that there's no such thing as the perfect one, and what works for some people probably doesn't work for everyone. And like everyone, everyone's got opinions. I should come clean though, Taylor, and say that Barry and I use live scope in the fall for jigging. I don't want people to get the wrong idea that I'm totally anti live scope or I don't use it, but I don't drive around and look for them.
Yeah. I don't care. It is what it is. I mean honestly, like I've done the same thing with my side imaging that some people are doing with live scope, where well, obviously it's just working a piece of structure, but you see a fish, you're gonna cast at it. That's
Sure.
who
Yeah,
cares?
that's an interesting philosophical discussion though, because like what is markedly different from those things? Like Mayhem's 10,000 casts last week. Like Chase Gibson caught whatever it was 51 and a half or something on leech doing that because they're fishing the sand, which muskies stick out like
Yeah.
crazy in the sand. So, you know, is that still cheating because he saw it on his side imaging versus like seeing it on your live scope and casting to it?
Seeing the
I
the only
like what's
problem
the
that I
difference?
the only problem that I have with the live scope, I would not have a single issue if somebody was working a piece of structure and, looking at bait balls, looking at whatever on the outside of the structure, or following the weed line with that, seeing where your bait is coming down the weed line, seeing how to work your bait, seeing a fish's reaction to your bait. I mean, it's a great tool, honestly.
Mhm.
And then if they saw a fish out the backside of the boat and cast it, I wouldn't care at all. It's the fact that you're driving around probably over too deep of water with that fish that's down, where it
Yeah.
shouldn't be, and you're pulling that thing up, and odds are it's not going to make it. That's the issue that I have with it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm with you on that. I think that for me is the ethical barrier.
yeah,
Is
yep,
the where you're in seek and destroy mode versus fishing and happen across one. I don't care if you're using down imaging, live imaging, side imaging, whatever. I think that's totally a thing. And if you're driving around, I would say like it's just as kind of weird if you're doing it if you're driving around with side imaging strictly like looking for the fish with your side imaging to specifically stop and cast at fish without actually fishing. Like I would say that that's kind of the same in the same vein. It's just not quite as easy to do with side imaging. But if muskies are set up in certain places, you could very easily do that. Like for example, the Chase Gibson scenario, like if they're set up like that on Leech Lake in the sand, you could just drive shoreline until you see them on your side imaging and then just cast to them. Like it would not be that difficult. But like
Right.
Thatcher Thatcher ran one the whole time that we fished in Canada, and like he is using it to position the boat the best way that he sees it for the structure that is coming in. Not to mention, like, there's just random rocks that exist in Canada. And then it was also interesting too because like you have that X factor on Lake of the Woods where those fish have the predisposition to just come into the figure eight more. So like you can see like once you get the fish engaged, then you're able to do more with that fish by seeing it that way that you wouldn't normally have that window. Oh god, I have to read because people are people are getting after it here. Ranger for 3 years before I got the clam. Carries them occasionally. Sometimes Parker. I don't know what he uses for solo fishing all the time. I mean, he uses the conservation series a lot, but he had a clam for a while. I don't know if he sold his clam or still has it. Um, yeah, it depends on the bag that you have on it. I didn't really have any too big of issues with the original bag on the conservation series. The problem with the conservation series that I ran into is because the meshing is so thin. Um, After it got used heavily, I had issues with fish biting through it. And that is not ideal. So that's why I changed it out for the power catch bag because I was like, we're done playing this game. And I've had that power catch bag on there for like 4 years now, 3 years now. It's been great. Love it. Leech Lake fish are not doing well. They're so beat up. I mean, yeah, a lot of those Minnesota fisheries are pretty beat up. A lot of fisheries in general are pretty beat up. Um, the the bank yankers down here in Iowa do a number to our fish. It's sad sometimes. Um, but I'll tell you right now, the easiest way to solve this, and Taylor, you can tell me if I'm dumb or not as I kind of get on my soapbox here, but this is one of the things that drives me nuts is because people harp on people for mishandling fish that don't know any different. And like, I understand that it is painful to see the like worst kind of sidewalk gravel picks, grass picks of fish. I mean, you know this from the DM program, um, kind of around where you live, but like the reality of how you solve that problem is not by like, don't get me wrong, we should be teaching everyone to handle fish better because inevitably it will like solve more problems and help more people. But like the easiest way to solve that problem is just stocking more fish because then it helps those bodies of water absorb those losses from mishandling, from swallowing swim jigs from bass fishermen, you know, all of those different uncontrollable factors that are going to happen anyways, whether, you know, Taylor and I teach every single person on the lake how to properly handle a muskie or not. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a butthead, but that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you reading the comments too?
Yeah.
I'm just like trying to play catch up. Um, Wait, so Parker, did you grab that net from Andrew or not? Or are you still on the hunt? You'll have to drop a comment below. But yeah, unfortunately, like the live scope, those technologies, they're not going anywhere anytime fast. But I will ask you, Taylor, because you're on the water a lot more than me. Um, do you see a lot of people using it in your part of in your neck of the woods, like doing the driving around looking for fish in open water thing?
There are people doing it. It's not. it's not near as bad as what it seems like it is. I haven't been to Minnesota, but from the way everybody talks about it, it's pretty pathetic over there. Um, but no, it's not like a terrible thing. I mean, for the most part, a lot of people up here are still, just fishing structure, working shorelines or rock bars or weed beds, whatever they may be, doing. But there are a few that you see with the pole hanging down or whatever, and
Mhm.
um, you can always tell the ones that are doing it because they're just in one spot, basically just over and over and over again, just casting and changing direction of their boat, and they're just
Right.
following a basically harassing the damn thing. But um, yeah, it's you see it, but I don't believe that it's as common and whatever as everybody wants to make it out to be on our smaller lakes and stuff up here. But it's out there. That's
I
all.
mean, the conjecture side of me says that similarly to how I feel about, side imaging, and we've talked about this before, where I just feel like Wisconsin Muskies and Wisconsin strain Muskies like we have here in Iowa are just so much more ambush oriented, where I feel like Minnesota fish are very much hunting oriented. And I think that in those circumstances, it kind of like the evolutionary biology of the Minnesota versus the Wisconsin strain just protects the Wisconsin fish more and makes the Minnesota fish more vulnerable. Obviously, size plays a role in that as well, but it- like Barry and I, when we jig in the fall, the fish that we catch, we don't usually see on live scope. It's just like you randomly like, one of the ones that we saw, we were jigging, and we jigged over this rock pile, and, like, Bondi goes down, bumps the rock pile, Bondi comes up, and then, like, off of the rock pile, like a freaking torpedo, one just shows up, and it's like, we had no idea that that fish was there. I mean, we assumed that it was there, obviously, because we were fishing the spot, but, like, the way that that fish just appeared out of thin air basically or thin water, and I don't know how still to this day I don't know how that thing freaking missed Barry's Bondi bait because it like tried to hit it too hard. I don't know, it was bananas watching it on the live, but
I I
yeah.
think that there's certain bodies of water in Wisconsin that are more susceptible to it, like the
Hmm.
deeper bodies and midsummer or Cisco based waters or whatever it may be. Um, but definitely when those fish are on the weeds and rocks and on structure and tight to it, it's kind of useless. I mean, those fish are you're going to see the follow as they get closer to the boat. But I don't think that you have a huge advantage unless you're talking like there is that perfect storm where it's usually like mid June, something like that, where you get the bug hatches and those fish are out in the open doing one thing, and that is just gorging themselves on
Right.
everything that's lake. And that's the time frame when, I mean, you can really beat them up if that's what you're doing with it. Um,
Yeah, I distinctly remember that was the thing that changed. That was the exact bite that changed the rule for the PMTT. And I was talking to my friend about this because we were talking about the live scope and professional bass fishing and all the stuff as we were driving to our lake to ice fish this weekend. And I was like, obviously sometimes these things happen that are unfortunate, but like this is not to defend live scope, this is not to defend the ethics of it or whatever, but like as well as I do that there is a time in Wisconsin where those bugs hatch and it brings everything in that lake to a very concentrated area. And I know for a fact that that bite was happening at the same time for that PMTT event because it was happening for me on our lake in Wisconsin at the exact same time. And I'm not saying that it's right, but like the stars aligned for whatever reason on that. Now, having multiple live scopes, all of the things, like there can be plenty said about that. Come at me, whatever. I don't care. You're not gonna say anything meaner to me than any of my students have at any point. So but like my point is that like that was a very specific time where something very like a very specific bite was happening and it just was this like perfect storm of things.
right. The one thing I guess that does really kind of irk me about the live scope and driving around. There's a fish, cast at it and catch it. Um, it's like a lot of guides are using it, to get people on fish, which I understand. Everybody wants to catch fish. Everybody wants to catch a giant fish, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I
Most,
get where you're going with this.
yeah, and most of these people, you have not taught them anything about musky behavior, they're doing, why they're doing it, when they'll be doing it, how to trigger that fish. I mean, it's here, cast right there. Let it sink. Okay, reel, reel, reel. Okay, stop, rip it, whack. I mean,
Mhm.
they literally, as the guide, they sit there and they tell you exactly what to do to get that fish to bite. And it's, I mean, they're not holding the rod right. They got the
Oh,
rod
yeah.
hanging. They can't fight the fish because they don't have the proper proper form of that. They don't know what to do boat side. They don't know how to trigger these fish, and you're taking out these anglers and they have no clue, but they're reeling in 50-inch fish, and that's the coolest thing in the world. um, Me personally, I feel like I'm on the water with a lot of people to teach them
Sure.
why what we're doing, and it's kind of a,
Yeah,
I guess,
the
a
earning and
slap.
learning. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if you're gonna hire somebody for their time and whatnot on the water, you should be learning more than just how to look at a screen.
That's,
That
yeah. No, that's an interesting perspective that I never really thought about because it's like the ultimate, like, fail safe that never used to exist in the sport. Like, let's be honest. Like, you know, if the times were tough, it's just like, well, fishing's tough today. We're just gonna have to grind it out, and it'll either happen or it won't. Whereas now, I don't remember who it was that I was listening to talk about it, but it's like they're talking about how they don't prefer to do it, but it's always an option. Like, because at the end of the day, it's the client's day, so it's like, well, is it hey, things aren't happening. Do you want to go drive around and see if we can find one to catch quick? And it's like it. Yeah, I mean that's always an option that exists, but like that also just kind of and it is the client's day, but I guess I don't know. I don't know what you do in that situation, like because yeah, that's just a weird philosophical quandary to me because like you want them to have a good time, you want them to catch the fish. I guess from my standpoint, it would be like if the fish makes or breaks how good of a time they're having on the water, then like I'm not sure that I'm the guy that they should be hiring, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
it
that perfect sense. That's
so
you so obviously my business is Musky Guarantee. I mean,
mhm,
that's how it started. That's what I live by. It got me to be able to do what I'm doing full time, and I couldn't be more thankful for that. But there's more to a muskie outing or a fishing outing in general than just hammering on fish all the time. It's I mean, the longer I've done this, which I haven't done it that long, but the longer I've done this, I've learned that people don't really care if they catch a fish that day, even though I'm probably more
mhm,
worried about it than they are. I mean,
right.
I'm constantly, we need to get one. I'm like, that's if I didn't care about it, I probably wouldn't be very good at this. But um it's definitely something that snipe 10.
Yeah,
It's
I knew it was like 9 or 10 that they got that day. But I think that the X factor there is the multiple imagings, I think was the
I think there was like 5 to or 7 transducers or something like
yeah,
that, which
that's
wild.
which yeah, I mean like like the, that's the indefensible part. Like the defensible part is like these guys, like this bite happens every year for sure. Like without a doubt, it happens. Year in and year out. It may not happen at the same time, and the stars align. But yeah, when you have like that many, because like then you get into this whole argument of like having the money to be able to do that and the ability, know how to sync them all up. That whatever. I'm not. I'm not gonna get into the weeds on that.
Right. But here's another thing though.
Something Minnesota records.
I thought with like the PMTT too, because like they had said that it was an issue where you wanted to keep everything fair, but I can tell you flat out that somebody that's got a 21-foot deep V fiberglass
Yep,
Ranger,
1000%.
somebody in a 14-foot John boat by their boat position and all this good stuff. So to say that money is the issue here is just that's kind of nonsense. I thought it was kind of a cop out, but
Well, I mean, that's the
hey,
same thing. Same thing as like when my buddy and I fished that Bassmaster National Championship. Um, I don't know when that was, 2017, 2016, something like that. And we're in his 18.5 foot Ranger that has a top speed of 50 miles an hour, but everyone around us from all these clubs from all over the United States have these boats that can go 70 some miles an hour. And we know exactly where we want to fish and where we want to be, but we know we're not getting there first, regardless of our boating position. So, yeah, I mean, you're 1,000% right. Just
yeah.
is what it is, man.
We fished a me and Donovan fished a little tiny tournament. I mean, a long, long time ago, and I think I had a toughie. I think I had the toughie then. But with all these huge boats, were out there, whatever. And then there was one little. It was like a little duck boat with like a 5 horse on it, and I'm like, man, I hope those guys fucking crush them. I was rooting for them so bad. I wanted the little guy to win, but didn't
So
work
that's
out.
that's the difference is like in some of those river tournaments that I've fished with Blake, bass fishing wise now, when you see someone in a boat like that, actually they have to limit like some of those river tournaments will limit the type of motor and the type of boat you can use because they can get to places in those boats that other boats can't get, and then that makes the playing field unequal. Like if someone has a jet motor and they can get to like
Yep.
some of those random little sloughs and it's like, oh, that's a whole nother can of worms. That's just like, whoa. But but I get it too. Like there's been times where we have found fish in those tournaments and we've like Blake leans on me to push pull us all the way up into those spots because it's like, he's got to be up there steering us and figuring out where we're going, and I'm just like back there chugging us along, and yeah. Anyway, river's an interesting place, but I would say Taylor, the one thing that I probably learned this fall from guiding with the frequency that I did, that probably gave me just like a feeling of like calm and like that everything's gonna be okay is just people generally just really like being on the water. Like like if I learned one thing this fall, is that people just want to be on the water and enjoy their time there. And the vast majority of those people, if they're good people, will be happy that they just got to spend whatever, 5 to 8 hours on the water, 10 hours with you and like learn something, hopefully catch a fish, but and then make some memories with whomever they're on the boat with. Even if things don't necessarily work out. Like there's one trip where we caught one, like I kind of called this fish because I was like, hey, we're gonna fish through this moon phase. It's gonna be right at the end of your trip, so we might catch one like at the very end. So don't be surprised if it happens because like we've got good conditions and the moon is there. But like the one guy had a top water fish just blow up in like the first 10 minutes, and it like it was one of those like 34 inches that just like goes bananas and the fish goes one way and the top water goes the other way and just like there's just water everywhere and the guy can't even believe it. um and like for them, they're just like the day was made right then and there, and they ended up getting a actually that was the biggest fish I guided here in Iowa this fall. They got a 40 incher that day, but they had a shot at a bigger one too on top water later, like probably 20 minutes after that first one. But yeah, anyway, they just like spending time on the water, being a family. Like I don't know what to tell you. It was cool. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if you have like kind of the same thing a lot of times. You'd have to tell me you run a lot more trips than I do.
Yeah, that's honestly, like everybody's different, but for the most part, I mean, it's people are just happy to be out there, and they genuinely just want the information. Or, I mean, I had one guy that we had a 5 hour half day. We sat for like 3.5, 4 hours, and just talked muskies. And I showed him the lake map. I showed him the auto chart. I showed him, all this stuff and kind of what I look for, what I like to do, what works for me. And he asked all the right questions. He sat and listened through it. We, kind of communicated back and forth. Um, and I mean, it was on like a new moon too. And I'm like, hey man, you got what you want? And he's like, yeah, this is way more than I even, thought I would get out of this. I'm like, well, you want to go catch a fish now or what? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we had like an hour, whatever it was. He ended up popping one on a drop tine growler.
That's
So
awesome.
that
Oh
wasn't
man,
it.
that's cool.
That guy, he didn't care if he made one cast on that trip. He was there for the information to get, what he came for was learning and seeing what I was doing and getting confidence in knowing what he was doing or wasn't doing was what he should have had going on. But yeah, and then the fish was just the, cherry on top. That's them are usually the best trips because it's like this. I don't want to say the pressure's off because like I feel like every day is a tournament. You wanna catch a fish every day, but
I'm a lot
no,
more
it's
tired after guiding than I ever thought I would be.
yeah,
I will level with you
yeah,
on that one.
yeah. And like you got the flip side where I had a client, I had two guys in the boat. We had like a three fish day, and they dumped one, and at the end of the
Mhm.
day, I was like, "Well, guys, I really appreciate it. It was a good time." And they're like, "Yeah, I just wish the fish were biting a little better." And I'm like, "Well, all right, yeah, me too." Like, what do you what do you say about it? It's just
Yeah.
free. So I don't know what you want more than that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I've been fortunate that like the guy like the toughest days that I've had in the boat have been with guys that get it and like understand what we're trying to do. And yeah, I mean, I remember like so Wayne commented earlier, the first trip that Wayne took with me, it just ended up being on this like high bright skies day. And it was in the spring, so we talked to some guys from Minnesota that were down for a couple of days, and they're like, "Yeah, it's been great the last 2 days out here. Like we've caught multiple fish each day. Today we haven't seen anything." I'm just like, "I believe you because
Yeah,
there is nothing happening out here." And like to this day, like that's one of like I could count on my hand the number of times that I haven't seen fish on that lake in even the toughest times, and that was one of them. And it just what do you do? Um,
yep,
but that's just fishing, man. I don't know what to tell you. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was, yeah, the other tough day, like I had a guy who dumped several fish the one day, and Scott. I mean, he's good stick, good fisherman, knows the program well, and just like honestly, what I think was happening was he was getting a bunch of those, like the 2 year class fish, 3 year class fish that are between 20 and 28 inches, 30 inches, smoking baits that are too big. Because I mean, he was he was fishing. The one that he came the closest to catching that I saw was at the boat, and that was on its a 6 inch six sucker. And then the rest of the day he was throwing either fortune teller or ridgeway, pretty much. And I just think that those little fish were too small to get the bait in their mouth. So I mean, what do you do if they don't stay hooked up? But he got teeth marks in my ridgeway squirrely tail, so it's been christened, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the story by Bowfin Juniors.
Yeah.
I
That's actually
things.
crazy because, like, knock on wood, my bowfins, juniors, I've had pretty good hookup ratios on outside of
Yeah,
a couple. The biggest fish I've had a shot at did not get hooks, and then like a couple others. But what do you do?
yeah.
Um,
That's mine. They either hit them directly in the head, right on where the leader's hooked up, or
mm,
they both tails and don't touch a hook. I have not had one center
mm.
punch one yet,
I
and I
had
don't know if
one.
being too erratic or whatever, but
I caught one with Andrew this spring, and then like 10 minutes later, I had one of those like stalker ones, those like 2 year old ones, come up, and I saw him do it. Like he came up and he grabbed it right in between the hooks. Like I saw it plain as day in front of me, and he did this and then swam away. It's like what
right,
the heck? Not that I needed to catch that fish anyway, because I certainly did not. I was just like, it just cracked me up because he just grabbed it right in between the hooks. And of course, like a fish that size, it's gonna be It's not, like a fish any bigger than that, there's no way it's gonna grab literally in that space in between the hooks. Like it would get a hook. So wasn't too worried about it, but I just found it funny, especially with your struggles on them this spring for whatever strange reason. I don't know what to tell you, man. But they're good. They fill a good niche down here during that time of year, I think, because that water's a little clearer and they get a little bit deeper on some of those breaks. But if you're up shallow, I found that the bowfins do not perform super well, super shallow, like less than 3 feet, for example. I found that
Hmm.
out this fall. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Fully I will fully admit to user error at any point in time. Karen says, "Go to Eagle with the Ridgeway." So crazy, all the follows. Yeah, so Karen, when I went with Glenn that time on Canyon, I went 2 for 3 that day on bites. I had another tiger swing and miss and another natural swing and miss. So you can count those however you want. I don't really care. I couldn't do anything about it because I didn't actually grab the bait. But I had, I don't know, between 25 and 30 follows. Like so many follows that I lost track. I mean, they were just coming out of nowhere to just, it was crazy. They like them. Those Canadian Muskies like the Ridgeways. There's no doubt about it. It's just figuring out the right body of water to throw them on and when. And his medal series, I think, now that he's got the pro series out and they've been out longer, I think that there's going to be some wild fish that will come out of Canada if some of those sneak their way north of the border. Um, they're just they just pull big fish. I know that I'm kind of a Ridgeway simp at times, but like I wouldn't throw them if they didn't work. So,
Can you still see that one that shot underneath your 6 incher?
oh god, yeah. When I close my eyes before I go to bed, it's one of the biggest fish I've had a shot at this past season. It's so
Yeah,
sad. It's so
that was
sad. It just didn't even get anything.
right. It hard too.
I know it was a nice fish. That was like a 44 incher, probably 43 incher, 45. I don't know. It was really nice. It was big.
Yeah, it's a good Iowa fish, that's for sure.
I was so sad about that. Oh man. That was like the tail of the tape for the Ridge this year. I don't know. I had that one with you, then like 2 weeks later I lost probably a 42 incher with Andrew on a 9 incher right at the boat. Like and then yeah, I lost something big in Canada on one. Two big things in Canada on one where it's just tough where Connor and I fish. Because the water is stained, so you just know if they're big or not. You don't actually know if they're pike or muskies necessarily. I mean, I caught a 42-inch pike there this summer, so it's like it's anyone's guess, but you just know
You,
that something big, heavy, and gray grabbed it and then came off,
you
which
didn't
is
put that
sad.
rig.
What's that?
You didn't put that one on a sucker rig. Drag it around.
No, no, I did not. That one tried to pull me and it was awesome. It it ate the growler right in front of me and then swam under the boat. It was so freaking cool. Oh,
Was that
man.
the 9 blade or the 8?
That was the 8. That was the normal one.
Hmm.
Yeah. You're just not supposed to tell, Taylor. Not
Oh,
supposed to talk about that.
oh man,
If someone makes it to, like, hour 2 basically and figures out that little clue after I've been teasing it all season long, then good on them. Good on them. Really, I think the only reason I'm teasing him at this point is just to like give Thatcher the plausible deniability, so he doesn't have to admit to his wife Jody that they're going to have to make a whole nother line of growlers in the near future.
yeah.
It was
Feels
the
like you've
only.
been hanging push
It
lawnmower for 2 hours.
it was the only thing that moved a fish for us on that high, bright skies day. It was the only
No,
one.
no, no. We had one more. I think it came on a pit bull, and then um, it followed in that dipstick. Remember, it followed us for like
Oh yeah, I
literally a hundred
forgot about that.
blocks.
Yeah, that's true. That was on a
Yeah.
different lake though, wasn't it? Or was that the
No,
same lake?
that was same lake.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot about that one. Yeah, he just,
Yeah,
like, hung around the boat. He, like he just didn't wanna leave, but he didn't wanna
yeah,
eat.
yeah. That's
Oh,
frustrating.
stupid fish. Well, Taylor, it has been an absolute pleasure. My phone is about to die, so I'm gonna have to cut this short before that happens. As much as I enjoy talking muskies with you and reminiscing about our uh, fun times on the water. But yeah, I appreciate the perspective and your time. Hopefully, people got something out of this. I think that there was like a wealth of useful tidbits through this. Like, if people didn't get anything out of this, then they weren't paying attention. So, anyway, uh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, because we're two bros that are just talking about musky fishing. What do you want? But
Yeah.
Taylor, please, by all means, pump any of the things that you need to pump for your guide business or your socials, all that stuff.
It's all pretty simple. I'm not a YouTube star like this guy, but I do have a YouTube. It's Musky Guarantee Guide Service. My Facebook page is where I do a lot of my business from. That's Musky Guarantee Guide Service LLC. Text call 715-490-5088, and I do have availability from, I think June is pretty much right booked up, and then I do have dates in June or in July, August, September, and October yet. So I'm about 50% of the way full on dates. So if you're looking to get out, be a good time to contact me.
Yeah, I mean it's worth noting that you're basically half full and it's January. So
It's awesome.
if you want to get in the boat with Taylor, I would suggest getting on it quick because those the closer it gets to warmer weather, the faster those dates are going to fill. I've
Yep.
got one, I think I've got one date left for spring. So if someone wants May 18th, hit me up. That's the last day that I have available, and then I've got some stuff in the Northwoods as well. That's gonna be that inadvertently got weirder because we're gonna have Callie's brother's wedding somewhere in there, but it'll be fine. We'll figure that out. And some stuff in the fall too. So I'm not quite as booked up as Taylor, but I don't run quite as thorough of a program as Taylor either. So Taylor, as always, dude, I appreciate you. And looking forward to having you and Gus down here in the spring. It will be a blast because how couldn't it be? So hopefully the Muskies agree and will cooperate too. But if not, it's all about the togetherness, which we've had a few of those too.
Correct.
All right, man. I will let you get to bed, and I'm probably going to do the same. But thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has been a blast.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, later, man.